else would it be? This is your Nowhere market update for Friday. This usually is a Wednesday um, broadcast, so to speak, but I delayed it to Friday. And so we're going to talk about a few different things. We're kind of talk about the nature of the market. I think we can look right here and realize the market isn't exactly giving us what we want. We'll go into that, okay? We'll talk about Bitcoin. Nowhere market updates are usually an altcoin video, whereas if you want Bitcoin, you can go to my observations. But we will talk about Bitcoin for a few minutes, go to some extra alts that I don't normally cover. We'll look at the state of the market and just see how we can analyze this. Like, what are some things that we can look at to the downside or to the upside? Like, is this a good sign that we are just kind of trickling right now? So we'll kind of look at that, kind of go into the state of those things. I don't know how long this video will be. I'm just kind of flying as usual with this, but we'll just get started. I don't really have any preliminary things. It's the weekend, but we'll look into how I think the weekend might look as well. So we'll just add that. So anyway, that's the preliminaries. Let's get started. All right, now first things first, we got the daily. We had, as we know here, this big move up was the ETF news, the pump and rejection, and we have a little one here. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, this also could be the ETF rumor that we had yesterday, and I think that was being circulated. I don't know. It didn't look like it was an official source. I saw the source of some panda guy. Like, as far as I know, that guy is not an official source, and he didn't provide sources, and so um, it didn't seem valid to me. But it doesn't stop people from maybe buying. So I don't know if that is the reason for the pump, but what I did say in the Nowhere Discord that I wanted a pump like this. The problem is that we did not get the drop down that I wanted. Now, if you want to translate that as to this being the drop down, this being the pump, then that can work. I don't know if that works for me per se, because we immediately got the rejection. So even if that does count as what I thought it would be, which I don't count it as so, that would be a deviation, which is not a good sign. Overall, almost got kind of like a head and shoulders thing going on right here, which is not the best, right? But the problem is that there's no follow through. If you do want this to be a head and shoulders, which is not a very good one, it's like a hunchback Notre Dame head and shoulders. You would want an immediate drop down to this level, about 25.5, and then you get a follow through down, which we could get. I think that's very possible within the next 24 hours. And that would give us a good scope of what we can expect. We've all been expecting this would drop down. We got the drop of the RSI, we got the bearish Abraham consolidation. So this ended up being kind of a false flat. So this ended up going to the upside, which is what I mentioned in the Nowhere mini market updates, that the underlying trend, which is the bullish trend, would be the expanding trend, which was the case. And so we got the expansion. So whether or not we could, whether or not this was a news-based pump, didn't neglect the fact that the Aron did its job. And that's kind of like, if you're familiar with reading between the lines with what I just said, I'm a big fan of not looking at news. So I'm a little contrarian to that versus other people. But I'm also a fan of showing, like, wherever we can look at a news based pump or whatever, or a fluctuation, the technical analysis can explain that. And Aaron does a good job about that. And so maybe that's one reason why I'm a little neglected towards news, because Aaron shows me so much. And so that's not to say that I'm right or it's right or whatever. It's just it worked out this way. But I told you pre-pump that this line would be the expanding line, and it was. But however, that led us to a very thick bearish consolidation. That's why we got a wider move here. And so I'm waiting for this to level out. The problem is that'll end up being a bearish wedge instead. So that could lead to the drop down. It could lead to a very escalated drop down. And so what I would be looking at with that, and this is abstract in a sense because I don't have any placement for this, but I would want this to drop down to right about here, about 25.4, or my previous marker that I had before. If it stays above this going into, let's say, like Tuesday, I think that's a good sign in my opinion. Um, so I'm under the understanding and the belief that there's two things. Price typically goes down as time progresses. It's a price analysis tends to deteriorate over time if there's no activity. So what do I mean by that? So overall, if things are not liquid enough, people are going to sell out, right? So and that's one reason why you get like from moves like this, like people, the price went up pretty considerably. We have a distribution phase right here, so that's like a basically fancy way of saying like price ain't doing crap because it's trying to establish a frame of reference for its current supply and demand. Now the problem is that there's a certain secret element that people don't really look at, and that's called time. So time is um, relative in a sense for this because the longer that this goes, time wise, the more likely the supply is going to increase. So basically, what do I mean by that in English terms? Well, if you bought here in February and you're making a profit, let's say by, next February. So, no, no, no. What am I saying here? So let's say, you bought, okay, scratch that. Let's say you bought here around Christmas time or whatever. So you bought roughly around 25,000 and you see price go up all the way to 60,000, like 60, 65, whatever. You're more likely to sell versus somebody that just bought at 60,000 and also saw 65,000. They think it's going to go up to 100. You might think so as well, but you have time on your side and they don't. They don't have the understanding of time and that price point. You've also held yours longer, right? So you're thinking from a time-based standpoint, hey, I've already held this. I'm already up 100x or not 100x. So I wish 2x, 100%. I'm just going to cash out. And so that's the idea. Like this distribution area is the mindset that people beforehand are more likely to sell. That's why there's a distribution. It's a fight between supply and demand. But the problem is time plays into that. The longer a price stays at the same price, and this is going into current price action, what I'm about to say, as price continues to stay at the current price for a longer period of time, people start to sell. And so that's generally what you see no matter what. And that's where Arum comes into play because it's not price based on time, it's time based off price. It looks at the last 14 candles of the highs and lows. And what it decides is that the longer the more highs and lows there are given a certain pattern within that 14-day period, it helps determine what you can see next. And so that's kind of how that works. And so that's the explanation I gave you on the 4 hour. Now, going back to the 4 hour with what I just said, we have a lot of time that's passed with nothing going on. So therefore people are more likely to sell. The problem is people have already sold. Okay, so we go back to the daily. People have already sold really for the past 2 years. But especially here like so. That's one reason why we pumped after the FTX so well is because, well, one, we had a divergence, but two, because of that, part of the reason we had the divergence, this leads into number two, is that there wasn't a lot of people here left to sell, and that caused an overcorrection to occur. And so that became basically liquid. Divergences happen when price movements are too accelerated versus the strength that it should have. So it's a liquidity concern. It's a demand and supply concern as well. And so you can marry all those together, the divergences, the momentum, the RSI, the ARN. That's why I use all of these in tandem because they work together for me as my method. So, but that's one reason why we got a big increase is because there wasn't, and I think I've said this a couple times this year, like there's who's there to sell? There's nobody here to sell anymore. The people that have sold have been selling since 2000, really since 2011 or 2021, um, but really since late 2021 into 2023. And that's one reason why we've had a large uptrend for so long, despite the fact that the price just feels dead and boring. And that's the unfortunate thing is that we are still up for 55% for the year, despite the fact that the price feels dead. Like the market feels dead. Everything feels dead, right? But it's not though. Developers are still working. There's still things going on. I had an increase of almost 100%, probably about 80% of my clientele. So that's in the past 2 weeks, just to keep that in reference. So there's people here that are not going away. And that's the thing. And a lot of these, and I can't share my client information, obviously, but there are people, the people that I am talking to are people that understand market cycles. And they understand that now is the time to build. Now is not the time to run. You see a lot of tweets and posts and everything about just the sky is falling kind of stuff. And I even seen a guy mention like you only see these kind of posts in a bear market. You don't see these in a bull market. And that's the thing. Like we are at a point where people are doubting their very doubts that they've had. Like you think you've doubted last year, now this is even more. Like this isn't even complacency anymore. This is apathy and despair, and that's the thing. Like this is the definition of a suckers rally, in my opinion. We are up 55% still for the year. We almost went 100% for the year, and so if we go from top to the top candle, it's 90%. Now, obviously, some of you guys didn't make 90%, and that's okay. I don't think I did either. But the thing is, we should not be in the mental state that we are in, giving the market conditions that we have. Now, and that's the thing. Like, I don't want to be that guy, but if we look at the date range, I mean, this has been not even a month. I mean, honestly, like I don't want to be that guy, but you just need to get over the fact that this is boring. Um, or you should use this boring price action as an advantage to learn something. Learn about blockchain programming, which is what I'm currently doing when I have free time. Um, or learn to write or market. Like I know that I plan to scale my business, and so if you're listening to this and you think that you can excel in this, give it a year and see how that goes, and get back to me because I might have a job for you. Or something like that. That's if my business goes well and the market goes well, and then you do your job well and things like that. So, but the point is, you might say like, well, Otsu, that's not fair to say that. But the thing is I did that in 2018. Like, okay, when the market went to crap, I stuck with it. Part of it was I lost money, like I lost 50% of my stack. I lost up to 80% of my stack at one point, and that was right around the same time frame. But the point is, I got to work. Instead of complaining about how boring everything was, I decided that I was into the technology. I learned how to write about it. I learned how to read it, smart contracts, everything else. And so, smart contracts, development stuff, writing, technical analysis. I did all three of those at once. Okay. And now that has benefited me. So, it will benefit you. I can tell you, if you're looking for, let's say you're looking for a job here in this space, all you got to do is put your mind to work, do something. You'll build your own website, build a project, write about stuff on a Medium blog. You can do whatever if you're consistent. I'm telling you, if you know what you're talking about more than the average person and you're consistent, you should get a job. You should get something to work for a company or a VC or a project or something. I can almost guarantee it because these people want to just see someone working and someone they can trust and do their job. They don't care about. I've never once had to tell anybody about my degree, anything like that. Like there's some people I've worked with for years that still don't know my real name because they trust me on an anonymous basis. And I'm telling you, it can work for that too. A little bit of a rant today. Apologize, but that's the state that we're in right now. Now, in regards to price action currently, it's a bit of a different story, right? And so now we gotta look at this for day to day in the moment. There's a few things you can look at. The first one is something I don't necessarily look into myself, but you can kind of play this out. And there's one reason why, if you're in my Discord, you know that I have not been posting a lot of charts recently. I have not been posting any long positions in my portfolio or short positions in my portfolio. And that's because there's really no opportunities from the long side. There are no opportunities really. Like things have been pushing up to the long side, but they've been fading. And honestly, like unless you're doing high leverage like on the 15-minute chart, you're not really doing much, and you're going to also get chopped out as well. The short positions look okay, but there's no good R&R to work with that. And, you know, despite the fact that people think that we could go to the downside, we've failed for a month now. And so that lends a perspective like, are we actually going down to the downside? People people think that, of course. Um, but here's the thing: there's no buyers, but there's also no sellers either. So that's the thing. People are buying in anticipation of something happening, which is a bullish sign, even if we don't push forward. But it's also getting sold really quickly. And I honestly, I don't consider that bearish. I consider that bullish, because we are waiting for something good to happen. And so this is probably my line in the sand. I don't think we go any lower than 24/7. I did a video how low we could go. It's worth checking out on X. But this is another frame of reference for that. But that's the first option, right? We could try to play this move right now and try to work something out. The problem is I don't flow like that, for one. Two, it's not really productive, because if we're in a situation like this, I hate to be that guy again, but you're better off just going to go touch grass or do something more productive with your life. And so it's really easy as this. And I'll even show you, like, so this would be, I think this would be the level that I would focus on, like these two levels, right? And so it's just as simple as hitting this plus sign, adding alert, and setting that alert. That's it. And then go ahead and do this. Hit the plus sign, add alert at these price points. These are the price points I'm looking for, correct? So I made those alerts, and then I just walk away from the charts. And then until one of those things occur, I know that I don't need to check up on the charts, or I could check them every 2 days instead of every 2 hours. See what I'm saying? So that helps you. And that I can't afford to do that because that's not how I operate. I got videos and other things. That's part of the consequence of being a full time crypto guy. But for you, if you're not into this full time, just keep that in mind. Like honestly, like nothing's gonna happen straight away. Like, and if it does, you can be prepared for that. So this is what I would do personally. Just kind of wait for a larger move and then just kind of check yourselves out. Go enjoy the last, for in the United States, for at least the last few months, month or so of summer left over, or what have you, right? So, or holiday seasons are also coming up, so you got that to consider. The thing is, don't regret your time on the screen. So, and that's a bonus message, I guess, for today. But do it intentionally. Don't waste your time looking at stuff that has nothing valuable for you, for your energy or your money, or just use it to learn instead. So that's kind of what I'm looking at for Bitcoin. Just waiting for this solid move here. And like I said, overall, I'm still bullish in a sense. Like I would like really this whole thing to hold. And we'll see. I think the weekend could finally give us a tell on what this will do. But if it does, I think we could hit this price point here. So, and from there, you can look at whether it's a rejection, whether it's a long, and you can figure that out. So, all right, on to Ethereum and alts. All right, going to Ethereum, kind of give us some altcoin context before I dive into some alts. I've mentioned before that I'm looking for a drop down to the red, at least to the middle marker at 1592 into the red line. I still think that we will get it. I've got no reason to think that we won't. We have a bearish engulfing currently on the daily. A lot of things working for us. We do have the bullish Adrian consolidation, however, but it is small, which makes me think if we do get both, if we get the drop down, it will recoil and it will wick back up. That's exactly what I want, actually. And so this, I've also mentioned, gives me context to think that Bitcoin will possibly do the same thing. There's a lot of uncertainties going on, and that's why I kind of say when there are uncertainties, you zoom out, right? You look at the higher time frame, you set those alerts I mentioned. I've got two right here that I'm looking at, and I think they should get met on the weekend. Other than that, it's pretty self-explanatory versus other videos I've mentioned. We still got the convergence. This should be a bearish convergence because of the bearish trend on the downside there. We have 13%, so this should happen within 2 to 4 candles. I usually give the current number of candles, which is the current percentage divided by 2, which gives us, or divided by 7, which gives us 1.8. So round up. You always round to the nearest whole number. So that's two. And you give another one to actually confirm it, and then you get another one to let the other trend go into perspective. So that's four candles total. That's why I mentioned that. So I think in about 16 hours we should see that drop down, which would be roughly about probably yeah, 16 hours from now. So whatever that looks like for you in your time zone. So that's kind of what I see. Pretty self-explanatory. I don't think there's anything much else to say. Everything's still choppy, but I do hope that we do get that down move so that we can get back into business. That's pretty much it for Ethereum. I'm going to cover some alts, kind of scan a few things, and see what we can look at. All right, so I want to look at some altcoins, and I'm just going to go down randomly as I see them. There's no pattern to this per se, but the first one's going to be optimism. So I do want to preface this to say there's a lot of altcoins that don't look good. And I also want to mention that now is not the time to look for altcoins either. So I really would focus more on higher time frame trends with Bitcoin, Ethereum, because usually what happens in this cycle is that, maybe I should just go back to Bitcoin and talk about this some more. So when you get a pattern like this that's kind of dead for the most part, a lot of that is because the liquidity's been sucked out of the market. Um, there's not a lot of buyers and sellers. The people that are here have already bought where they want to buy, and the people that have sold have already sold where they want to sell. So there's really, we're really in kind of a middle area where nobody wants to do anything. It's not because that there's nobody here. It's because that everybody that is here is already placed themselves on the chessboard, you know. And so the only really thing to change is new new money coming in. That's the thing. We are waiting for new money to come in, whether we like it or not. That's what it is. And so that's the thing. There's current um, outside environments that are preventing people from adding new money to Bitcoin. And there's a lot of things at stake because of that. And it is what it is. But the thing is, unless all of a sudden people that are already here gain more interest to get into the market, um, the market's not going to change. This could stay sideways for 3 years if no new money comes in. Now, the good thing is that new money will come in regardless of whether there's an outside catalyst or not, based off of liquidity that you get. So the lower down we go, the more people will be interested in the market. I do know people that have came to me that did not know I was in the crypto world, because I'm pretty anonymous for most people in my day-to-day life, that know my real name, know where I live. They are not familiar with what I do. Um, and so they've came to me saying that they're going to buy Bitcoin, they're going to buy crypto. So I know people are starting to come in, they're starting to think about it, and that'll come in regardless of news, because that's just how price works. If they see a good deal, they're going to buy it, right? And when you see a lot of people come in saying like, "Oh, Bitcoin's gone up 500%, I'm going to buy some now," that's the sign to get out, not the sign to get in. The inverse is the sign to get in, and that's kind of what we're seeing right now. I'm not afraid of this current price action, because this is usually a sign that we continue higher. Now, that being said, we may not continue higher for 3 more months. So this could stay relatively sideways for the rest of the year. I mean, honestly, I could easily see it staying this way till November. But I would like to think maybe towards the end of September we start to see some action. Now, this all correlates to what I was going to say about optimism, um, because now is not the time to buy altcoins. Now is the time to focus on Bitcoin, Ethereum, because when new money comes in, they're going to buy Bitcoin, Ethereum, or some other coin. Believe it or not, they still are interested in some older coins like XLM. Um, LTC for some reason always takes, and Bitcoin Cash tends to be up there. You're still going to see those tickers will never really go away. I mean, but that's because when somebody signs up for their $10 referral on Coinbase, that's what they're going to see. They're going to see the coins that come up when Coinbase shows them, and so that's why exchanges like Coinbase really matter, because they are more catered towards newer traders, casual traders, and those are the ones that we need to look at. And that might not be where the money is, but that's where the money flows from. So that's why I'm interested in Bitcoin and Ethereum first, because when the market does become alive again, Bitcoin and Ethereum are going to move more than altcoins are. And so, and that's generally like old school alt season, that was fundamentally the case. That's why we looked at Bitcoin pairs, because we could easily see where the Bitcoin pairs lie. And, let's look at, I'm just thinking Link BTC, if it even exists. This is, let's go ahead and turn on my ARIN band. Like, it's been a downtrend for so long. Um, and so usually when this flips bullish, which it actually is very close to doing, that would be the time to get in. The problem is it's been a downtrend for really 2 years now. So anyway, something to keep in mind. That's a different topic. But what I'm saying is when the market does change, you want to be more in Bitcoin and Ethereum than other alts. So anyway, so that's one reason why the alts look worse than they do, or they're bad. They are bad. But I do think they'll continue to get worse even if the market recovers, because people will be interested more in things that have less risk despite their risks. So Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, things like that. So we'll get into alts now. So a little bit of a detour, and we'll just take a look at that. All right, so the first official alt is OP, and one thing I'm interested in is this large trend line. Pretty simple with that. I'm going to zoom up to the 2-day. And this is what I'm looking at. I got no reason to believe that this trend line will not break. If it does, we got bigger problems anyway. But I wait for a small drop down. Maybe roughly right around this as the low. You got about 16%. So you got a pretty good, almost 3R here to work with. You can size up if you feel like it. And that kind of goes there. If you do believe in OP as a long-term position, you could do something like that, get you a healthy 9. And so I think that's pretty good. You got a small bearish consolidation to confirm that we could be getting that drop down. When you get a smaller consolidation, you usually get a bigger move. So here's an example. Smaller consolidation, larger move. So that's kind of the case. You had a smaller consolidation, larger move to the downside. So that tends to be the case. And so that's kind of what I'm looking at for optimism. That is a 2-day time frame. So keeping that in mind. But it's just a short altcoin. We're going to look at some others. So Compound is another altcoin that looks pretty good to me. This is the 2-day time frame. Now, this is a coin that honestly has faded pretty considerably, so keep that in mind. And all these coins could never recover again. But Compound is an older coin that has done pretty well in the DeFi space, and it is a good sign. Like, if the DeFi space recovers, it's pretty much down about 80%. The entirety of the DeFi space is down 80%. And if DeFi recovers, which I think that it will, Compound should be one of those, coins to look at. Synthetics is another one. Aave is another one. Uniswap is another one as well. But one thing I like about this position is that we did have a recovery. We almost had like a spring here. This was a pretty significant recovery, honestly. And I remember talking about it extensively. Even if you, if you take the entirety of the move, you're looking at almost a 2x, or a 200%, I should say. But even if you look at it from this standpoint, yeah, you basically have a 2x. So it's pretty good. And the reason why I'm flagging this one is because we have a retest point coming up right around the $37, $38 range. We have a bullish wedge coming up as well on the 2-day, not the 1-day. So this is a very good long position that I would consider. Somewhere maybe just above the bar. I might take a second position below the bar if we get it down there. This is a relatively tight stop, but I would maybe do something around here, around 16% for something more conservative. Target the highs again, and you got about a 6R to work with. I like this one a lot, and I can see, the market this week hasn't done as bad as hasn't done as good as I thought it would have done, but it hasn't done bad either. But I think that we could see some of these alts kind of do decently well in the next couple of weeks. So this is one that I'm looking at. Let's look at maybe 2 or 3 more, and then we'll end the video. Another coin I want to look at is Fetch or FET. We talked about this earlier this week. This has been a hot topic that has faded since then, but it is getting closer to my target point. I have not discussed this much, but this was a position that I wanted to look at. And the reason why is because once you break this, I should have entered here, to be honest with you, but once it breaks, I generally don't buy in as soon as it breaks. I wait for a candle close, which is roughly around where that positioning is. So that's what I'm looking at. So this is not a position that I have entered. This is a position that I'm waiting for to enter. So I would probably adjust it like so, about 15% inside the range here. And so this is kind of where I would look. I would probably enter somewhere around here. I think I'm going to just go ahead and set my alert for that. I thought I had one, but maybe it's a different exchange. I don't know. So we're getting the retests, and so this is what that looks like. You have the retest point. Let's adjust this. Turn that off. So here is my liquidity zone area. We went back below it, so this is what I'm looking at. Looking for a retest of there. We're pretty much getting it. I would expect a long position. We're still hovering above the 50 RSI, so that's good. The A rune is trying to cross upward in a bearish move, but we'll see that it's kind of inconclusive at this time. Overall, I like this. I think it's a good chance if it can confirm to the downside target that I'm looking at. I think I'll put it a little bit lower and then kind of go from there. So I think that's a good idea if we get it. Pretty solid, pretty clean. We had that break. I have no reason to believe that this is going to just fade. I mean, it could, but of all the alts that we have, this one looks pretty good. All right, so I'm going to add DYDX. This isn't the last one. I'll do one more, but this is one that I discussed. I can't remember the context of how I discussed this per se, but I was looking at some of my old notes, and this is a this is a position ascending triangle that is currently failing. So this is a good context. This is on the daily, and this really needs to recover. I'm not really sure why that's there either. I'll just get rid of that. So this is one that needs to recover. If it does recover, then this sets up a good potential long position as far as its R value is concerned. If not, then this is something that we should avoid and possibly even short if you are able to short it. I'm not sure if it's shortable or not. I'm going to adjust that. And so this remains to be seen. We have a lot of time left in the markets, but if it recovers maybe about 2%, well, maybe 2.5, then I think it's worth a hold. This is one to keep in mind. Again, it needs to close above the wick to give us any sort of long positioning. Otherwise, this makes a good short opportunity. And so if you went along it, it would be something like so. I'd probably target below right here at this level. Anticipate the break. And so you got about 3.6. If you wanted to short it, let's say it shorts below, then I would probably do something like so, and maybe target this breaker right here. So you got about roughly the same. So overall, looks pretty good on either direction. It just needs to find a direction. So that's something to keep in mind. All right, and last but certainly not least is CASPA. We talked about this in Knowhere. And if you are in my Discord, we talked about this a couple times actually. We talked about the original pump up with the bearish divergence, that it could lead to a deviation, which it did. We looked also at a bounce here, which it also did. This is where the long position was proposed with an alternative long position that did not make it. So I'm going to delete that. And so currently this is doing good. This is from the entry point, currently at about 12%, but it did go as high as 15 and even higher if you may have gotten out at the wicks. So this is an interesting position. There's no weakness per se. There is a hold on the 50, so this could recover and continue higher from now. But this doesn't look particularly well, so we could see a drop down. And so if you also, there's another thing to consider. It could be a retest of this point, so keep that in mind. If you're in this position, I would not be ashamed to get out because it's a pretty good hold at this point. And I could see this easily going back down here and doing another long from that point. So that would be free money. So that's another interesting thing. We also crossed bullish, but now we have an A-rune bearish consolidation getting ready to confirm at the end of this closing candle in about 6 hours. So that's something to keep in mind. This could go either direction, but I do like this one because it does seem more active. I know that the people behind it are active. And so this lends itself to more interesting price action. And so we could get the drop down. I don't know if I would add anything at this point. I would either wait for that drop down or wait for a full recovery up at 4.2, 4.28 cents. So other than that, I think Caspa looks pretty good. I think it could be a leader. It already has been a leader, but I think it continued to grow probably the next 30 to 60 days. So that's another one to look out for. So anyway, that's the video. I hope you enjoyed it. I got to kind of run, but we'll just stop there. I got a lot of stuff coming up. I got chart requests. If you're in my Discord, I got chart requests coming up pretty soon, in addition to some other things. But I hope you have a good weekend, and I'll see you next time.